the Mythos line of one-shots. Each one retells the origin of a different Marvel superhero. Necroscope. So Necroscope is a series of novels, horror novels, about a guy. Hi, I'm Glenn Simpson, and I've collected comics for over 40 years, and I'm showing off my collection one box at a time. Today, we're looking at box number 111. We're going to start with Multiple Man, some Multiversity stuff. We've got, checking my notes, we've got Mutant this, Mutant that, some Mystic. We're going to get into the ends with Namor, Naomi, and there's a few little random things after that that are not big names, but might be some things you've never seen before. So thanks so much for being here. Please like and comment and subscribe. These things help the channel. I appreciate all my subscribers and all my viewers. And but hey, let's get going with box 111 here on Glenn Simpson's Comics. Okay, so we begin this box with Multiple Man. This stars Madrox, Jamie Madrox, who is a mutant who has the power to split into duplicates of himself. He first appeared in Fantastic Four, oddly enough. There's a few mutants that have done that. But this, I believe, is his first major appearance prior to sort of taking over the X Factor book and turning it into a book that centers around him and a few strong guy and a few other mutants having a detective agency and things like that, because it's not written by Peter David, who did all that, but I didn't check the years, but I think that's what this is. This is kind of using the property, and then somebody, it rang a bell with somebody and said, hey, let's you know, make this guy the main person in X Factor. But anyway, that's issue 1 through issue 5 right there. Let's see. Then we have Multiversity Teen Justice. So before the New 52, there was a series called Multiversity, and it was written by Grant Morrison, and it sort of defined the DC multiverse, the 52 Earth or 52 universe multiverse as it stood at that time. And then with the New 52, it stayed 52 Earths, although some of them changed up a little bit. The nature of some of them changed, and some of them just kind of jumped around on numbering. But for the most part, then, you know, the concept of multiversity moved away. But then a few years ago, I don't know if it was because of the word diversity that's suggested by it, but they decided to make it sort of a brand for stories that take place on other Earths, of which I think this is the only series. But this is Earth 11, where the heroes there's a lot are of reverse gender. So the boys are the girls and the girls are the boys, and some of them are in between. And this is all about how an adventure that they have. So that's issue 1 through issue 6 of Multiversity Teen Justice. There. Then we've got Murderworld was another one of the series of things they've done recently where they instead of doing it as a mini series like 1, 2, 3, 4, they do it as a series of one-shots, but you got to read the one-shots in the right order for the story to make sense. So it's a bit of a cheat, but I guess it's an opportunity to put a number 1 on multiple books. So this is the Scotty Young variant of Murderworld Avengers, and then I think I have them somewhat, I can't remember if I have them alphabetical or in story order, but maybe story order since this is Game Over. This is supposed to be the last one. Murderworld Game Over, #1. Right there. Then we get to the Mutant Misadventures of Cloak and Dagger. So, Cloak and Dagger had first appeared over in Spectacular Spider-Man, and they were 2 runaway teens who got injected with some experimental drugs, and they came out with superpowers, so it went, and then eventually it was revealed that their powers, the drugs didn't give them their powers, they just activated them, and that they were really mutants. And so they sort of, lingered on the outskirts of mutantdom, but having recently had that revelation, and of course they did that because the X-Men were so big, and that was a good way to give them a boost in the real world. They had this title, Mutant Misadventures of Cloak and Dagger, making sure that mutant was in the title there. So that's issue 1, and then we go through issue 4. Got the New Mutants showing up. Speaking of mutants, issue 5 with a mostly naked adversary. Say hallelujah. Through issue 8. There. Issue 9. There with the Avengers. Through issue 13. Now, with issue 14, I didn't catch this until just, a day or two ago, prior to getting ready for this video, that the title switched back to just plain Cloak and Dagger. So I'm going to move these, but since I didn't show them in the previous video where we had the Cloak and Dagger regular series, I wanted to go ahead and still show them here. And then when we're done, I'm gonna do what I got to do to get them moved over there. So that's issue 14, and it gets canceled with issue 19. And I think this may be where they say, no, you weren't really mutants. Sorry, we thought you were, but you're not. Alright, then we have Mutants versus Ultras, First Encounters. I believe this is a series of pinups. They're just pinups featuring Marvel characters fighting Malibu characters. Marvel had just bought Malibu. There's a whole long story about it, but basically Malibu had developed a new coloring system that was really good, so Marvel bought them out so that they could use the coloring system, and then the characters kind of fell on the wayside. But let's see, I think that's a wraparound cover. Get a little bonus on that. There you go. Then we have Mutant 2099. So this is an odd little book. So 2099 was, of course, the line of books that sought to talk about the future of the Marvel Universe, and you've got all these people who get powers, and they take on the same names as, 20th, 21st century superheroes. Then Marvel Knights, of course, being sort of the darker, edgier side of things. And so there was a month somewhere along the way that, and I think Robert Kirkman did all of them. It's a series of one-shots that either introduced or reintroduced 2099 characters, and most of them were, again, you know, just like Punisher 2099, where it was somebody that you'd heard of. But this one was a little different. It was a totally new character. It just sort of is an impression of what a mutant might be like in 2099, or it's just one character, but it's the only one that was a totally new name and character and things like that. So that's a one shot. Then we get into Mutant X, not to be confused with the TV show, which we'll talk about in a little bit. This features Havoc from the normal sort of 616 universe, gets thrown into an alternate universe where things had developed differently, and so it's one long adventure with him in that universe where the Marvel heroes are a little different, and he fights to find his way back and things like that. So that's issue 1. It was actually a pretty long-running series. Issue 4, he hooks up with the Madeline Pryor of that universe. His duplicate from that universe. At first everybody thinks that that's who he is, and he has to. He starts off by not letting people know that he's not their particular Havoc. Issue 5. Here's a little tape. Issue 8. Issue 9. Through issue 12. Issue 13. In this universe, Storm is still a vampire, which was a kind of a classic storyline where she had gotten bitten, and in the normal 616 she gets better. Through 20. These are some pretty big packs because these are all kind of dollar bin, but it's some good meaty reading. It's an alternate lore if you're into that kind of thing. Issue 20. Issue 21. Oh no, he's killed Apocalypse. He didn't kill Apocalypse. Through 28. Mutant X 29. Through 32. And 32 is the final issue of the series. And they had some annuals. Annual 99. And through annual 2001. Alright, then we get to the other Mutant X, which was a syndicated TV show that ran in the 90s. And it was about people who, had powers, and they were hunted and feared, and the good ones with the powers would try to stop the bad ones. The bad ones were all working for a kind of an evil corporation, and the good ones all had a a leader who, you know, gave them their missions and things. And as I understand it, it was a situation where somebody came to Marvel and said, give us an X-Men show. And so they gave them this, but then, you know, it wasn't actually literally tied into the, you know, the X-Men movies of the time, which is what had prompted this. So I guess this actually might have been 2000s. I think I said 90s, but gosh, how long has it been? Then somebody was mad because it didn't really tie into, you know, the real X-Men. It was its own thing. But that being said, it was full of beautiful people, and seems like it ran for 3 or 4 seasons. I rewatched it a few years ago, but they had a couple of actual comic book, just one-shots relating to the show. So this is Mutant X, Dangerous Decisions. There. And Mutant X Origin. There. So then we get to Muties. This is kind of just a bit of an alternate look at the mutant concept within the Marvel Universe. Forget who the writer is on this, but it's there. Maybe on the last issue. No, just kind of a taking that. What early on, they didn't dig deep into, hey, there are kids who are mutants who are just, you know, ugly. You know, it's having a detrimental effect on their lives. Even, you know, when people would say that, oh, I'm being so ostracized, they'd still be like Kitty Pryde. They'd still be a pretty, you know, every once in a while you'd have a Nightcrawler, yeah, but, you know, for the most part, they were still reasonably attractive. And so I think this was one of the earliest attempts to say, well, you know, there should be mutants who don't come out of it looking pretty. So it's issue 1 through issue 6 right there. Then we have Mutopia. This is part of the House of M. The Scarlet Witch has altered the whole world such that mutants are the ruling party of the world, and humans are second-class citizens. And Mutopia X. Did I say that wrong? And this is all about there was a series called District X, which we saw in a previous video. And so this is sort of when you flop that over into this new world, this House of M world, it becomes Mutopia X. And where the mutant police are, you know, have a little more juice. So just slightly different story. So anyway, issue 1, through issue 5. Let me get that out of the way. Yikes. My Greatest Adventure, number 1. So My Greatest Adventure was originally an anthology series, you know, telling the stories of, you know, probably fictionalized, but regular people having, you know, amazing adventures. And then at some point it, you know, changed and became more of a fantasy book, and eventually became actually the book where the Doom Patrol originally appeared for several issues, and then Doom Patrol took over the numbering as a title from My Greatest Adventure. So in order to theoretically, in order to not lose the trademark on the My Greatest Adventure title, they came back much later and did this series, which was an anthology book, issue featuring 3 stories, one of this Tonga character, one of Robot Man, which is the tie-in to the Doom Patrol, and this sort of Swamp Thing-like character called Garbage Man. That's issue 1 through issue 6. They make it seem like they're all in the same story, but it's actually 3 different stories. Mys-Tech Wars ties in with the Marvel UK stuff, and it's sort of like their Crisis on Infinite Earths. Or Contest of Champions or whatever. They're getting everybody from the UK comics together to deal with something and throwing in some X-Men and whatnot. It's issue 1. I guess I should say it's their Secret Wars, right? Mys-Tech Wars. Issue 4. There. Mysteries of Love in Space. This is just one of those quarterly anthologies that DC does these days. I think it's so they can try out new talent, see how they do, kind of thing. This is a combination of mystery and space, which we'll see in a second, and the various romance books that DC used to do. So that's the one shot of that. And then, speaking of mystery and space, we have this facsimile of Mystery in Space 75. And this is it's not the first appearance. Is it the first appearance of Adam Strange? Probably not. I don't know. I guess it would have to be. I mean, why would they do a facsimile if it's not? But the first or an early appearance of Adam Strange, the character who is an Earthman who gets zapped to an alien planet, and he's only able to stay on the alien planet for so long, but while he's there, he's so much more heroic than everybody else there, he has to save them all the time. So that's issue 75 there. Then, years later, before they did the facsimile, but, after that original series, they, again, presumably to preserve trademarks, did Mystery in Space, starring Captain Comet. Captain Comet being one of DC's earlier superheroes, and kind of revitalizing that character. There's also, it features The Weird, who was a character who had appeared in a 4-issue miniseries, and it's Jim Starlin doing what he does arguably best, which is outer space, intrigue, and adventure. It's issue 1 through issue 8 that's The Weird. So they're fighting each other. I think I remember The Weird being a good guy in his miniseries, but he becomes the baddie in this series. Alright, then we have Mystic Arcana, and this is a 4-issue kind of I think they're all one-shots again. Each one focusing on a magic-oriented character. So we've got one of them being Magic herself. There is a storyline going through it, which I think is indicated by the numbering. I think I've just got them alphabetical. That's issue. So that's the Magic issue. Got some beautiful art on the covers. Then the one for Sister Grimm from the Runaways. Right there. Mystic Comics was a series from Marvel, or Timely as it was known back in the 1940s, and when it came around time for the 70th anniversary, they did all these one-shots that told some new stories of the characters that had mainly appeared in the old book. So this is the Mystic Comics 70th anniversary, I believe. This is the Golden Age Vision character, I think. That's issue 1 shot of that. And we have Mystique, the shape-shifting mutant assassin. Got her own series for a little while. Joseph Michael Linsner of Dawn doing some covers. And we find out here that she's periodically goes on missions for Charles Xavier. When she's not being a villain. She's the former mother / father of Rogue. She is, and Nightcrawler, is just kind of a badass, obviously well known from the X-Men movies as well. So that's issue 1 through issue 4. This was part of the Tsunami imprint that Marvel tried for a little while. I'm not sure what the the throughput, what the message was, or the common denominator was. All right, we'll actually see, I think, 2 of those in this, at least if not this video, 1 more in the next video. Issue 5. There. Got Mike Mayhew doing some photorealistic stuff there. It's before AI, people. 13. She's got a little miniaturized sidekick guy. Through issue 20. '21. Through 24. And that is the end of that particular Mystique series. Then, not too long ago, she had another mini-series. We didn't know it was a mini-series, I guess, at the time, but maybe it'll come back. But that's issue 1. And it ran for 5 issues. As we speak, during here in, by the time you see this, 2026, Marvel seems to be doing pretty much 5 issues at a time of things that are on the not sure things like Amazing Spider-Man or whatever. So then this series, despite being Sabretooth and Mystique on the cover, it's Mystique and Sabretooth on the inside. Don't ask me why, but I tried to stick to my guns and file it under Mystique and Sabretooth. That's issue 1. We got basically these 2 harsh characters teaming up. It's issue 1 through issue 4. There. Barcode. Not barcode. Barcode. They should have had his head. Oh, no. That wouldn't work. Anyway. Then, I just picked this up for some weird reason and out of a $1 box one time. Mythic. Or maybe it was a free. Somebody sent it for. I don't know. I didn't seek out this book very heavily. Mythic. Number 1. When magic gets messy, we clean it up. From Image Comics. Then we have the Mythos line of one-shots. Each one retells the origin of a different Marvel superhero, and tries to kind of, you know, update it a little bit, clean it up, you know, make it a little less hokey. And they did several of these. Mythos Captain America, for example, and Mythos X-Men, and there's a Spider-Man one, and, you know, a Thor or whatever. And thus we come to the end of the M's, possibly the third largest letter of the alphabet. I imagine that the S's and the X's are probably bigger, but now we make our way into the N's, and we begin with the Nam, a series that focused on the Vietnam conflict and tried to be fairly realistic about it. Not really my cup of tea. I don't really remember why I have this, but she's cute. And so I have the Nam issue 23 there. Then we get to Namor. Another of those tsunami books that I was just mentioning earlier, which is a title arguably a little more appropriate for Namor. It takes place in his childhood, some childhood adventures. It's only 25 cents for that first issue. Written by Bill James, who's more of a higher up editorial person at Marvel. I guess he was kind of getting his feet wet, no pun intended. And that's issue 1 through issue 8. Got Greg Horn doing the artwork, which is interesting now that I think about it, because Jameis will later, which we saw in an earlier video, do the Marvel series with Greg Horn doing all of the covers for that. Relationships being formed. Issue 9. There, of course, Namor being one of Marvel's earliest superheroes, their undersea superhero. Issue 12. There, the final issue of that. Apparently Namor has a thing for blondes, which is interesting because I don't think I guess there are some other blondes. Actually, the only other blondes I can think of, you know, that are Atlantean are his cousins. So, freaky deaky. Then we have a recent series. Namor had gotten hurt really bad, and in a previous adventure, and he has to be coaxed back into the water to settle matters in Atlantis. There's a big war going on for who's going to rule Atlantis, and so he's got to get involved and potentially resume his kingship. There, that's issue 1 through issue 4. There. Issue 5 through issue 8. That ends that series. He's wearing more of his full suit, not just his skivvies. We have Namor, the Best Defense, one-shot. I keep forgetting to look up what these one-shots were, but they're tied into the Defenders, which of course Submariner, Namor the Submariner, was a member of. There's a Doctor Strange, the best defense, and Immortal Hulk, the best defense. I think a Silver Surfer, the best defense. And so the storyline runs through those one-shots, but I forget what the heck the story is in those, but there you go. Alright, then we get to Namor the First Mutant. Similar to Cloak and Dagger, when X-Men became a big deal, you know, mutants were rocking the world. They started kind of looking around and saying, well, who else might be a mutant? And because we can boost their popularity by saying they're a mutant. And, you know, Namor is, not all Atlanteans have the wings that enable them to fly. So he is, in addition to his normal strength and speed that he got from being a half Atlantean, half human, he also is a mutant. A mutation gave him his little ankle wings that allow him to fly. So that's issue. So eventually they gave him a series, and just to play up the mutant thing, they call it Namor the First Mutant, and that's issue 1. Through issue 2. Jay Lee doing covers. Issue 6. There. Issue 7. Dealing with Doom. For all of you big Dr. Doom fans, here's one for you. And the series ends with issue 11. During that time, they did an annual, which was a 3-part story that was crossing over with, I believe it was Steve Rogers' Super Soldier and Uncanny X-Men. So to get all parts of that, you'd need those two as well. Alright, then we get to Namor the Submariner. So his first, I think he always previously appeared in books, you know, with some other title. So I think this is his first Namor series. This is chronologically before this is in between well, this is before both of the two that we've seen already, actually. John Byrne comes in and does the writing and art on this, brings in a lot of other concepts and things. This is where we get the notion that the reason that Submariner is such a cranky butt all the time is because of some sort of mental issue due to his being a hybrid, and that there's, you know, something he can do to manage so he's not such a big old grouchy person all the time. There's issue 1, and that's before I think we really, well, maybe not, before we got into those sorts of drugs and things in the real world. Anyway, issue 1 through issue 8. This is also another, you know, dollar box series, but, you know, lots of good chunky content. That's what you want. Issue 9. Issue 12. That's a beautiful, if you're an Invaders fan, got this beauty cover there. Issue 13. There. issue 16. So one of the things that John Byrne did here was pick up on where things had left off in Power Man and Iron Fist, with Iron Fist being having been killed, and so he actually brings Iron Fist back in this, in of all places, Namor the Submariner. Namor's first cousin once removed, Namorita, one of those blonde cousins I mentioned. Issue 17. Oh, spoilers. It's the Super Skrull. Issue 24. A Wolverine appearance. Issue 25. I guess finale to whatever story it was that they were telling. 28. More J. Lee art, early J. Lee art, in fact. '29. Through 36, just lots of adventures. Much like Aquaman over at DC, he goes through his long-haired phase, being shown here with a couple of his former love interests, Lady Dorma and Marina. Issue 37. Hey, it's the 90s. We've got to have a foily, shiny cover. Through 44. There, Jeff Isherwood coming on. They'll do it for quite a few issues. Okay, and then issue 45. Oops. 5. Versus various foes, including a Tuma. It's not a Tuma. It is a Tuma. Through 52. There. Three. The Sea Leopard. 56. Giganto. This being the big monster that in an early, 60s Fantastic Four appearance, the beast that Namor sicked on New York City. '57. And that series ends with issue 62. And along the way, he had some annuals, including his annual 1 from 1991, part of the Subterranean Wars storyline. Ran through several annuals. And then his 4th annual, it was just devoted to him, with this Harrison guy that did a lot of painted covers. Alright, that brings us to Naomi. Brian Michael Bendis, famed Marvel writer, comes to DC, starts doing a few different books, takes over Superman, and clearly asks, hey, I want to create some characters, and one of them is Naomi. She's a young girl who discovers that she is from another dimension, and she has superpowers, and all of her ties to DC lore. She would kind of get elevated pretty quick. She gets put in the Justice League book. She gets her own actual TV show on the CW for one season. But then when Bendis left DC, I think a lot of the interest, in her disappeared. But, say what you will about Bendis and his writing and whatnot, but he's clearly, interested in creating new, diverse characters and getting them as much exposure as he can. So that's issue 1 of Naomi through final issue of her first series, issue 6. Then she got a second series, still by Bendis, issue 1 through issue 6 there. There we go. We have National Comics. So National Comics was a DC series back in the 1940s that ended at some point. Then in 1999, DC did this line of mostly one-shots that each issue was a like All-American Comics and Adventure Comics and things like that were brought back those original anthology titles. And it features 2 members of the Justice Society, having an adventure back in the 1940s or 1950s, and then the All-Star version, All-Star Comics version, I believe, is 2 issues, and that's kind of the framing, which is actually how a lot of those early Justice Society stories were set. At the beginning of the story, all of the heroes would get together, they would find out there was something bad going on, and then they would split up and all have like little individual adventures dealing with whatever the big issue was. And sometimes you would have the regular writers and artists of that character doing their part of the adventure, and then they would all come together at the end to fight the big boss. So this was kind of a shout out to that in a way. So National Comics Volume 2, number 1. Then the next version of National Comics, I think they just didn't, again, trademark preservation, was a series of one-shots that were bringing in new versions of potentially forgotten characters. There were 3 or 4 of them. One of them being Eternity, which is a play on Kid Eternity, which is a 1940s character. His ability was, so he's a kid, he dies, he goes to heaven, he finds out he's not supposed to be there, he's not supposed to have died, and so they send him back, but as part of sending him back, he has the ability to summon the ghosts of in solid form of former heroes, gods, superheroes, basically anybody he thinks can help him, he has wacky adventures like that. There was a Vertigo version of the character, and they recently introduced a new version in the JSA series that's out now. But this was, yet another attempt at the concept, just a one-shot. Nobody kind of picked up on it and ran with it. Then also included in that was Rose and Thorn. Rose and Thorn was a 1970s concept of a young lady who is very shy, quiet, and reclusive, but what she doesn't know is that she has a double personality, and that the other personality dresses up as a superhero and goes out and fights crime. And so this is a bit more of a taking it to the, a bit more of a modern look at it, or a different look at it. But that's what the National Comics sort of resurgence. There were, like I say, there were 3 or 4 of these. I don't think any of them were leveraged beyond those one-shots. I mean, some of the characters have come back, but not exactly in the way that they were used there. And we get to Nation X. I think this was like part of the Genosha storyline, or Utopia, one or the other. One of the previous attempts before Krakoa for all the mutants to gather in one place and try to live in harmony. That's issue 1 through issue 4. There, got Thunderbird and Dupe. Where's that? Warpath and Dupe. I guess the older brother is Thunderbird, and now the younger brother is Warpath. There was a one-shot relating to, despite the way it says it here inside, it's Nation X, X Factor. So this is where it goes. One shot relating to that. So then for something a little different, or not too different actually, Necroscope. So Necroscope is a series of novels, horror novels, about a guy a kid who can speak to the dead, and they speak back, and he is able to. It starts off all about how he's able to speak to them, and he can learn things from them. So in video game terms, he has access to any skill, because he can just go talk to some expert, and have access to, and then they get into, and those people who were studied things could continue to study those things even after they were dead, so they would have even more advanced knowledge than they had when they were alive. Which was all cool and very similar to what we just talked about with Kid Eternity. But then it turns out in like the first book that there are also vampires, and the whole thing turns into the main character and a set of other sort of psychic and psychoactive characters forming a group that fights vampires, and the vampires it's pretty graphic and gross and things. But so there was an adaptation of the novels. This is issue 1. All of the covers are kind of like that. That's issue 5 of the adaptation from Malibu. For book 2, I don't think I have the whole thing. I've just got, let's see, that's issue 1. Through 3. Maybe that is the whole thing. Can't remember. Maybe there may be another issue after that. Then we have a one-shot Negasonic Teenage Warhead, taking the character as she... so Negasonic Teenage Warhead was a character from New X-Men, I believe the Grant Morrison period, and then she just kind of got plucked out of that and brought to fame and in the first Deadpool movie. So this is a one-shot kind of taking that character as she appeared in the comics and modifying her a bit to be more like the character from the movie and leveraging all of that. So, and she got her own one-shot there. And finally, we have Neil Gaiman's Mr. Hero, the Pneumatic Man. Neil Gaiman, of course, famous author, creator of Sandman, and who is, as of this recording, having some issues due to some allegations of sexual misconduct. But back in the day, he was the bomb. And for Techno Comics, he created this character, Mr. Hero, who I don't have a lot of it. In fact, I've only got one of it. But it appears to be, a steampunk kind of robot who has adventures. So, Neil Gaiman's Mr. Hero, the Pneumatic Man. And that is all for this box. Okay, so that was box 111. Next time we'll do box 112. We get into things that start with new at that point, which is there's a lot of stuff that starts with new. We'll have New Adventures of Superboy, New Avengers, new Challengers, new Champion of Shazam, getting into new Excalibur. So it's going to be a good time. It's going to be all new, right? Thanks so much for being here, and hey, have a great day.